of the great devotional writers of the church from the 17th century is Richard Baxter. He was born in Shropshire, and for many of the years of his ministry he served in Kidderminster and saw quite a turnaround in that town. When he arrived, there were only a few people who were godly. By the time he finished, his ministry had been so fruitful that there was hardly a family that didn't sing psalms and praise God. And it was largely a result of his own prayers and his own work. He focused on pastoral visitation and teaching people the gospel truths through catechism. They'd have to learn Q&A, and he'd go around and test them. And he led many hundreds of people to Christ. Baxter wasn't only a personal worker and a great pastor, but he was a preacher. And out of his experience of illness and feeling the frailty of his life, he's well known for this phrase, "I preached as never sure to preach again as a dying man to dying men." He knew that sin killed, but the gospel gave life, and therefore he prayed and preached with passion to see people brought to faith. And it was Baxter who came up with the phrase, he was a mere Christian committed to mere Christianity, which C.S. Lewis later used as the title for his great introduction to the Christian faith. Now, Richard Baxter's great work was The Saints' Everlasting Rest. In 1647 he was quite ill, and during that time he felt that he was going to die. He went on a program of meditation, and in order to help him meditate more effectively, he wrote his thoughts down. That ended up in this book, The Saints' Everlasting Rest. It's meditations upon heaven and the heavenly life. It was printed for the first time in 1650, and it went through, I think, 10 editions in the first 10 years. It's got 854 pages in it. He talks about the fact that we should live a heavenly life, and by being heavenly minded, we make ourselves of more earthly use. But there's one section that's always gripped my heart more than anything. He talks about the fact that naturally, even as Christian people, we've got a downward bent. We tend to be earthbound. We tend to get caught up with the things of this world rather than the world to come. And in order to take hold of God, we have to stir ourselves and rouse ourselves and deal with ourselves. Now listen to this passage where he exhorts us to seek God like never before. "Whoever you are, therefore, that reads these lines, I require that you tender your allegiance to the God of heaven. As ever you hope for a part in this glory, that you presently take your heart to task. Chide it for its wilful strangeness to God. Turn your thoughts from the pursuit of vanity. Bend your soul to study eternity. Busy it about the life to come. Habituate yourself to such contemplations, and let not these thoughts be seldom and cursory, but settle upon them. Dwell there. Bathe your soul in heaven's delights. Drench your affections in these rivers of pleasure, or rather in this sea of consolation. And if your backward soul begins to flag and your loose thoughts to fly abroad, call them back. Hold them to their work. Put them on. Bear not with their laziness. And when you have once in obedience to God tried this work and followed on till you have got acquainted with it and kept close guard upon your thoughts till they are accustomed to obey, until you have got some mastery over them, you will then find yourself in the suburbs of heaven, and as it were in a new world. You will find indeed that there is sweetness in the work and way of God, and that the life of Christianity is the life of joy. You will meet with those abundant consolations which you have prayed and panted and groaned after, and which so few Christians do ever here obtain, because they know not this way to them, or else make not conscience of walking in it. Oh, that's a stirring exhortation. And if we will apply ourselves to this pursuit of God, to set our affections on things above where Christ is seated. There will be moments when the revelation of God will come upon us, when that sweetness, that bliss, that delight, that sea of consolations, we'll find ourselves walking in the suburbs of heaven. We'll find ourselves tasting of the heavenly fruits. We'll find ourselves in Emmanuel's land. We'll find ourselves closer to God than we have ever known before. Baxter's epitaph: farewell, vain world. Thou hast been to me dust and a shadow. These I leave with thee. The vital, unseen substance I commit to him that substance, life, light, love to it. Baxter's hope was beyond this life, and that's where he is now. Buried in Greyfriars Church, just a garden up in London, an unmarked grave, but soars with the greats in the heavenly realm.